Hello everyone, I'm Liam with Learn STEM, back with another episode for you guys. Today I want to help you get a better score on the physics portion of your MCAT exam. While you might be saying, hey, this only is 25% of the second portion, it is still an important part of your score, which I'm going to try to help you improve. So I'm going to give you some tips and tricks today, as I have taken two 70-question physics tests, which have been MCAT based, and I've earned 2 perfect scores on them. So I want to help you guys with the tips and tricks that I have learned to get those good scores, and help you guys, improve your scores. So let's get right into it. The first major section that I want to cover is basically the fundamental concepts. So I would highly suggest that you guys go back into your physics textbooks, look over the most major fundamental ideas, such as each chapter, give it a glance over, really make sure that you understand the concepts that you do not understand, and make sure that you're confident in your abilities in the areas that you do understand. For instance, I was confident in my abilities in around chapter 5 if you have like the GN Colley textbook. So chapter 5 is about like orbital motion and stuff like that. So I was confident in that, so I didn't spend too much on that for my first exam, but I was not as confident in sound waves. So I made sure to study extra into sound waves, and that is something that I ask you guys to do. Make sure that you understand really well the concepts that you need to study. So once you have those concepts down really well, sorry, that was my brother's bird. So once you have those concepts down really well, make sure that you can not only do like conceptual questions, but actual questions. And then, except you should spend more time on the sections that you do not really understand, which is common sense. But after you learn those most fundamental and major concepts, I would encourage you to go back and learn the more detailed instances, such as the Hall effect. The Hall effect is one of like the more minute fundamental concepts. It's like one of the smaller major ones, except I've seen it on both. I mean, not both, but a large portion of the second MCAT exam that I took. So definitely study the Hall effect or those more minute but really critical ideas. My second tip that I'm going to give you guys is that you should not only just memorize important formulas, but understand how they're supposed to be used. And even memorize the periodic table, as that is often a part used on the physics portion, but I'm sure that you guys have already memorized it for the plethora of other questions on chemistry. So the reason why I ask you to not only memorize the equations, but realize how they're used is because specific equations like the Doppler effect, even if they have the specific ways that you're supposed to solve them in the equation, they can be generally confusing when you're remembering them. So do practice with them. Make sure that you understand them. Like even for instance, the potential energy equation of electrostatics, the PE is equal to K times Q1 Q2 over R. That could be confusing if you're trying to use it to solve for something, when in actuality it's more supposed to just serve as a gauge. Even more on that idea, you might not only just want to memorize them, but see how some equations are derived. For instance, when you're looking about magnetic force, which is like force times current times length times the magnetic flux, the magnetic flux, you really want to understand how those equations are derived. For instance, one question that I got on an MCAT exam, it was whether it is derived from the dot product or the cross product. Pretty simply, you can, if you understand how the dot product and cross product works, you can gauge that it would be the cross product because you have to multiply the entire equation by sine of theta. However, if you didn't really want to memorize this or try to figure that out during the test, I would suggest that you memorize this because it's something simple that saves you time and earns you that point. Also, just as a disclaimer, I'm sorry for my brother's bird in the background, but this is the only space where I could get just a little bit of quiet. So let's get back to it. For my third tip, I'm going to suggest that you guys understand how to find the basic SI units of more complicated units. For example, Tesla, which is magnetic flux density. I'm pretty sure you can break it down into kilograms over area times second squared. So this idea that you can just derive equations from units alone by breaking them down into the SI units, then using those units as a kind of formula to get the answer. Not only does that save you countless amounts of, seconds or minutes even on the MCAT exam when you're trying to find that specific formula to get your answer, it can also help you deriving other units or other more simple SI units, if that makes sense. For instance, you could rearrange that Tesla is equal to kilograms over area times second squared into finding the kilogram, or finding the second squared and then taking the square root of all of that. It just gives you countless opportunities to save time and get better quick at math. So I would highly suggest that you guys learn basic SI units and how that relates to more complicated units to give you quicker if that's the word, quicker, and more easy math, you know? So on to number 4. This might be my most favorite tip that I have learned over my exam experience. And that is that if you see a question with, multiple choice question, of course, with different answers, and each of those answers have different scientific notation, like exponents. Like, for instance, like A would have 10 to the 5th, B would have 10 to the 6th, C would have like 10 to the 12th, and then D would have 10 to like the 23rd or something like that. If you see that, make sure that you don't like waste time. And here's the trick that I found. So basically, you only take into account the exponent. Like, let's say if you're multiplying by the universe permeability constant multiplied by the charge of an electron, you don't take in those like first 1.6 or 4 pi into consideration. You only take in those last parts of the scientific notation into account, like the 10 to the large number or the 10 to the very small number. That way that you just get those easy numbers to work with, and then from that you can get your answer extremely quickly. Not only have I found this to be not only time saving, but it also can help you as if you keep on messing up in the small calculations, those general easy to work with 10 to the exponential numbers, those can help you get your answer. So make sure to keep this one in mind. So on to tip number 5. This is to use real life physics to your advantage. So basically how I found this out is that on my first exam, I had this one question. It was pretty simple, I would say, but I forgot the formula to it. So I actually used real life physics to my advantage. The question was something like you have 2 objects that are at different heights and you drop them, and you have to analyze the time difference between the way that the first one hit this the ground, and then the second one from a higher point hit the ground, and then the time between that. So I couldn't figure it out arithmetically. So I actually held up my pencil and I dropped it, and then I held up my pencil at the same height, and then I dropped it while counting that, and then I just subtracted it, and then I extrapolated that data that I just, collected in an informal type of experiment to the actual question. And not only did that get me the right answer, it actually saved me a lot more time than me, stressing out and getting flustered trying to get the actual specific arithmetic answer. So keep that in mind, that real life physics, well, it's not going to be applicable on, the atomic physics or, orbital stuff like that. It will help you on the more easy and more simple problems that you might actually not know how to solve. So keep that in mind. On to tip number 6. So everyone loves those long passages. That's part of the MCAT. Except personally, it can be up to whatever you want, meaning that if you like reading those passages and you find that you're a quick test taker, I would recommend that you read those passages. But personally, I feel like they don't actually help you too much. And I feel that if you just try to get started on the questions after the passage and you feel like you can do most of them, then I would actually recommend that you skip the entire passage, because most of the time it has just, random information in there that tries to get you tripped up. So I would just suggest that you try to work on the questions after that long passage. And if you don't understand how to do one of the questions, you can always just flip back to the passage really quickly, give it a quick look, and then your answer will be probably most likely in there. Trust me, the passage is usually just a waste of time. So continue working, get all of the stuff that you can done without the passage. Go back if you really need it, but trust me, you probably won't. On to my second to last tip. I would recommend that you take lots of practice tests. A great resource that I've found is actually on Pearson. You can go into I think it's My Study Group or My Study Guide, and then you go into that, and then there's an entire section on MCAT Physics Prep inside of I'm trying to remember what it's called. Let me check really quickly. I'm back after I've checked. And it's called the Pearson Mastering Physics Study Space, My Study Space. So you click down, and then you scroll down. I can put an overlay. But so you scroll down, and then you click on MCAT Study. And then you click on the section that you want to do. Let's say circuits. You click on that. And then it gives you a whole plethora of questions about it. And usually they're pretty challenging, but that's good, right? You want to be prepared. And lastly, this might be a little bit controversial in the fact that I am going against what other people have said, but I recommend that you do not just rest the night before the exam, because usually that is when you refresh your mind on all the concepts that you might have reviewed upon, because usually the night before is when you're like glancing over, just reviewing, not studying. You review the night before all of those like formulas, refreshing your brain, get a good night's sleep, and then the day before the exam, the day of the exam, just be confident in your abilities, because you know that you have studied for this, you have reviewed the night before, and you're ready to take the exam. So that wraps up all of my tips and tricks. Hopefully these have helped you. Please comment down below any other questions you might have, because I can try to answer them. And continue to try to study. You guys can do this. You can get a good score on your physics portion of your MCAT exam. You guys got this. I'll see you later. This was Learn STEM. Adios.